Hey everyone, good to see you today. Something pretty significant just came out of Washington, and honestly, it could change the way Americans think about retirement for decades. President Trump recently floated the idea of a brand new retirement program for working Americans, inspired by Australia's superannuation system. Now, if you're like most people, your first reaction might be, wait, what does this mean for me? And is this going to replace Social Security? The interesting part is that this idea didn't even start as a retirement proposal. It emerged during an event celebrating the largest private donation in American history, which shows that there's a lot happening beneath the surface. There are details here that most people haven't heard yet, and understanding them could change how you plan for your own long-term financial future. Before we dive too deep, let me ask you something simple. How do you feel about the future of retirement in America? Do you feel confident, worried, or unsure? Your perspective matters because we all come from different backgrounds and experiences. That context helps us understand how these proposals could actually impact everyday people. So let's break down what happened and why it's catching so much attention. A few days ago, President Trump was on stage at the White House celebrating a $6.25 billion donation from Michael Dell and his wife Susan. That donation is being directed toward the new Trump Accounts for Kids, a program designed to give every child in America a small investment nest egg to help them get started in life. But what surprised everyone was that during his speech, Trump mentioned something far bigger, something that could potentially affect the entire U.S. workforce. That's when he brought up Australia's superannuation model, and if you've never heard of it, don't worry. Most Americans haven't. Australia's system requires employers to automatically contribute 12% of a worker's income into a retirement investment fund. Workers can add more if they want, but the mandatory 12% alone grows over a lifetime through the stock market. Over time, this system has created one of the largest retirement savings pools in the world. Over $4.3 trillion Australian dollars, which is roughly $3 trillion, and that's in a country of only 26 million people. So when you hear officials like Trump or Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent praising it, and investors like Larry Fink from BlackRock calling it the gold standard, it starts to make sense why this grabbed national attention. It's a system that works exceptionally well for a relatively small country. And now people are wondering, could it work for the United States? Naturally, the big question is Trump trying to replace Social Security with something like this? The short answer is no, not right now, but the longer answer is more nuanced and frankly more interesting. What he's hinting at could fundamentally shift how Americans save for retirement, how employers contribute, and even how we think about personal versus government responsibility in preparing for old age. And the discussion didn't start out here. It began with the Trump accounts. Let's talk about those for a second. Starting in 2025, every child born in the United States will have $1,000 placed into an investment account, which will grow until they turn 18. They can later use the money for education, buying a home, or even starting a business. Michael and Susan Dell's donation adds another $250 for 25 million kids from middle-class and lower-income households. Trump even called these accounts the first trust funds for every American child, highlighting the philosophy that early investing leads to greater opportunities later. That idea forms the bridge to the bigger proposal. If children can start investing early, why shouldn't working adults have a similar system funded by employers to secure their own retirement? When Trump spoke about a plan for working adults, he was very deliberate in referring to the Australian system. The vision seems to be a future where children start with investment accounts, working adults contribute to employer-based funds, and over time, each generation accumulates more personal wealth rather than relying solely on public programs. But while Australia's system has been successful, replicating it in the US would be extremely challenging. For one, Australia legally mandates employer contributions. No exceptions. In the U.S., retirement savings are largely optional. Some employers offer 401ks, others don't, and even when they do, contribution matching varies widely. Add to that the complexity of America's healthcare system, where Medicare, private insurance, and Social Security all overlap, and it becomes clear that any major change would be far from simple. Another important factor is Social Security itself. It's not going anywhere soon. Over 70 million Americans depend on it. But the trust fund is projected to be depleted by 2033. At that point, it could still pay about 77% of benefits. The urgency of preserving Social Security's long-term health is likely one reason the administration is exploring alternative systems. Some believe the motivation is to strengthen long-term savings, others see it as a way to encourage family growth as the birth rate declines, and still others view it as a philosophical shift away from entitlement programs toward personal investment responsibility. Whatever the reason, the fact that a sitting U.S. president is publicly praising a foreign retirement system is unusual and has policy experts paying close attention. Comparing the two systems highlights why a full U.S. adoption would be complex. In Australia, the contributions go into private investment funds. Workers own the money, earn returns, can choose investment strategies, and can switch funds if they want, but cannot access it before retirement except in emergencies. Social Security, in contrast, is a collective system. Your payroll taxes go to current retirees, not into an account in your name. One system emphasizes personal ownership and market growth, while the other provides guaranteed benefits through collective pooling. Any shift toward a superannuation-style system in the U.S. would face major cultural and political questions. Would Americans accept mandatory employer contributions and risk exposure to market volatility? Opinions would likely depend on confidence in Social Security and comfort with investing. The reality is that Australia's system didn't emerge overnight. It took decades of legislation, cultural change, and economic adaptation. The U.S. political system, with its frequent gridlock, would face enormous challenges implementing a similar system. Business groups would likely push back, policymakers might argue about overreach, and the public would have concerns about market risk. Investment accounts offer growth potential but can decline in value. Unlike Social Security, a U.S. version might require additional rules, guarantees, or protections to prevent catastrophic losses. All of this remains theoretical at this stage, but it paints a picture of the scale and difficulty of such a proposal. So, what does this mean for you today? It means the administration is exploring ideas, the Trump accounts for children are officially moving forward, and retirement reform discussions are now front and center in national dialogue. The conversation is unlikely to disappear because the underlying pressures, people living longer, disappearing pensions, rising costs of living, are only increasing. If the U.S. adopts even a partial system like Australia's, younger workers could accumulate far more wealth over a lifetime, but older workers would see less benefit, meaning any transition would likely take decades. Social Security would remain the backbone of retirement security in the interim. To be clear, Social Security would not be replaced. The Trump accounts don't replace anything, and a superannuation-style system would act as a supplement, not a substitute. Social Security provides income security that investment accounts cannot guarantee, especially for older Americans who depend on it for nearly all their income. Additionally, a shift to investment-based savings requires strong financial literacy. Australians have developed a cultural understanding of their super funds, while many Americans lack basic knowledge about 401ks, index funds, and investment fees. Implementing a similar system in the U.S. would require a nationwide education effort to ensure people understand their choices and risks. Finally, examining Australia's success raises a philosophical question. Should retirement responsibility be shared between workers, employers, and government, or remain largely government-backed? This debate is at the heart of the current conversation. Regardless of federal action, the financial landscape is moving toward earlier and more personal saving. Trump's remarks have simply pushed this conversation into the